Welcome to another edition of Horner's Corner. I'm Ray Horner, your host, and as we sit down and talk with Akron's greats on Horner's Corner. And today, this month, we're going to sit down and talk to certainly one of Akron's greats, and you've heard his great voice for over 30 years as the voice of the, quote, Arrows, RubberDucks, and ultimately, he is living a dream in the broadcast booth, and we'll get to that story coming up. Our guest this month is my good friend Jim Clark with us. Jim, thanks for joining us this month.
Great, thanks for having me. It's really neat to be here with you today.
All right, so let's get into the story on how this all came about being. And I remember when I was a kid, I used to play a little game called Stratomatic Baseball, and I would play for hours and hours and hours. But you also had a board game. You were describing play-by-play, and that's kind of where it all started for you.
I played the Bob Feller game, and that was just a spinner. I still have it at home. It's very old, but I can still tell you that 16 was a double play, 1 was a single, 3 was a double. You remember those things. And I would sit in our basement, my dad's pool table, and set it out, and just play for hours and call the games. And I had a recording of the old scoreboard at Cleveland. When they hit homers, it exploded. Horns came out. I loved that scoreboard. So I would listen to games, and they'd hit one, I'd hit my recorder, record it. So when I played my games, when an Indian would homer, I'd press my button, the scoreboard would go off. I'm sure I drove them crazy upstairs. But that was when I wasn't playing outside, I was down there doing that.
And that's how it all began, with Jim broadcasting baseball games in his basement at the pool table. And of course, we'll get into the stories on how that dream eventually came full circle for you. But let's talk a little bit about it. You start at a young age, and you go up to WAKR, and you want to get into the broadcast business.
What a thrill. I came down and talked to Jerry Healy in the 9th grade on career day. And he goes, "What do you want to do?" I go, "I want to broadcast Akron basketball, Akron football, and the Indians for WAKR." He goes, "Well," I'm doing 2 of those 3 right now." And of course I knew that, because I'd listened to WAKR as a kid for years, to Tony J. Tony the Tiger was their DJ at night from 7 to midnight. And I'd loved the radio, and I loved WAKR. So I'm in my senior year in college at Akron, and we had traveled with Carl Dickinson, Bob Wiley, who I love Bob Wiley. I listened to him for years. I watched him on television with the Zips games. We traveled with them from the university station on road trips. Carl goes, "Hey, we can get you guys on a flight with us to go to Western Illinois, Northeast Missouri State, fly with us. It's cheap." So I got to know them very well.
Yeah.
And the Kenley players were in town at E.J. Thomas. They had great plays all during their season. They were coming down, I believe it was 79, fall of 79, and Joe Namath was coming to town in picnic with Donna Mills. I thought, I'm going to that press conference. I kind of wanted to see Donna as much as I wanted to see Joe Namath.
Who wouldn't, right?
Well, she doesn't show, but Joe was there. We go through the interview. He's great. And Carl looks at me and goes, "What are you doing today?" I go, "I'm going home. I'm a college kid. It's summertime." He goes, "Come down to WAKR." We're just going, "Yeah, it's 853 Copley Road." He goes, "Come on down." So I go down there. He goes, "Come on in the studio." First he goes, "Grab some copy and write some of your own copy, like you're on TV." I go, "Okay." He goes, "Sit down in front of the camera." I thought, what in the world is going on? He goes, "Look at that camera and read the sports. The Indians won 5-3 today and blah, blah, blah." And he writes on a piece of paper, he goes, "This is how much I'll pay you a week." He goes, "I want off television. I'm tired of being here until midnight at night." I go, "What?" I go, "Carl, I don't know what I'm doing." Because "You can do this." And well, I go, "I'm student teaching in the fall at Akron. What time do you get off?" 2:30. "But I got 2 classes after that." He goes, "Talk to them get here at 3, you work till 11, you're on the 6 o'clock news with the sports, with Dick Russ, Marcy Massette, I believe, and Jack Ryan on weather. And then you're back for the 11 o'clock news. I thought, well, I'm not going to say no, but I was petrified. So I go back to Akron. They rearranged my schedule where the classes I had in the afternoon could be done by arrangement. Do my student teaching in the morning for Dr. Wyatt Webb at Firestone, and then get done with that and go to work. And they started me out covering the PGA for radio. You know, I would do Bob Wiley's radio when Bob was retiring. I was taking Bob's place on the radio for his afternoon sports, his golf show, his golf and bowling show by Tasty Pure Foods, which I said Tasty Pure Foods one night. I couldn't get it out.
Can you tell he's done play-by-play?
It was easy to say. So I replaced Wiley on the radio, and Carl goes, "I'll cover this golf tourney for us at U.S. Amateurs up in Cleveland at Canterbury," which was great. John Cook, Mark O'Meara, I had a wonderful time doing that. And he goes, "And you'll start on TV in 2 weeks." I thought, this is nuts. This is crazy. I'm thinking, Gib Shanley's on 3, Jim Mueller's on 8, and Jim Clark is on Channel 23. I go, it's not right. And I never felt comfortable. Dick Russ was there to try to help. Mark was starting there. Mark Williamson was starting at the same time I was. Frank DeMarco was there. They were trying to help, but I felt better in the field going to do a story. Mm-hmm. I did at that time in front of the camera. And I was on for probably 2 months. Nobody said a word. You're good, you're bad, do this, do that. So I just kept going in every day. One day they go, radio all the time, you'll do some field reporting, don't worry about it, same pay, that's what you're doing.
Well, you got to credit the folks for seeing the talent in you, though, as a young college student and getting you into the broadcast arena. But in broadcasting, a lot of us will do the side hustle. So you're doing broadcasting, and at the same time, because we're a roundabout way, we're going to get into the story about the Arrows and the RubberDucks here. But you start to work at Walsh University in the athletic department, and then all of a sudden, there's a team in minor league baseball from Vermont that you hear is going to come into Canton, and the light goes off. So talk about those times.
I thought, this is my chance. I thought, well, how do I get a baseball job? There's no teams close to us. I was really enjoying myself at Walsh. It was a lot of long hours, as SIDs know, but I was young, I didn't care. It was athletics. They say it's all this hard work, and I go, it is, but it's basketball and volleyball and baseball. It was work, but it's still kind of play as well.
I understand.
And so they announced they're coming to town, and their offices are at the Civic Center. I walk in, just walk into their little office, which is really the ticket booth, is where their office was then. And I met with Glenn Strong and Jeff Belzer. I go, got a play-by-play guy? They go, well, yes and no. They go, what do you do? I go, here's my tape I made at the stadium last year. They go, we got to get you in here somehow. They go, what else do you want to do? I go, well, I got a full-time job. They go, oh, that's even better because we don't pay much money. And I go, do me one favor. I go, just listen to one thing. I go, we're the Canton Akron Indians. I go, I pull out my old Cleveland hat with the C and a wahoo in the middle. You guys should wear this hat. I go, Canton Indians. There's no A, but there's the Cleveland logo. You got the Indian in the middle. And by God, they did. They wore those hats with the blue hat and the red bill. On the road, they were all dark. It was a replica Cleveland hat then. It was wonderful. And we kept talking and talking, and they hired Mike Snyder. Mike was trying to get a big league job, and I think he knew the only way was to call some minor league baseball for a little bit, and he was so good. And we get down, we're about a month away. They go, Jim, can you come down? I go, yeah. They go, we can't hire you now. I go, what? They go, well, the station wants one of their guys. I go, I kind of understand that. They want one of their guys with Mike. It's their station. I go, I get it. So Scott Davidson was on the first year. I go, I understand. I go, that's right. They go, but you got to stay in touch with us because anything could happen. Well, the next year, Scott, I guess, didn't want to do it anymore. And they go, it's you and Mike. That was 1990. And we had a ball to learn from Mike and his professionalism. Of course, he was at WAKR as well.
Right.
In the middle 80s.
Yeah.
Before he went to Cleveland to call the Force soccer games. And being with Mike on a daily basis was just wonderful. We still laugh at our moments. We had a great time. And then Mike goes, well, he goes, I'm applying for the job in Cleveland. Paul Olden is gone. I think I got a shot. And it was Mike or Tom Hamilton. Hammy got the job.
Yeah.
Mike goes back to Cleveland at 3WE at that time.
Right.
He's still there.
He's still there doing sports.
He's like you, two of the nicest guys you'll ever want to meet in the business. Professional, great at what they do, and you guys are the same. And to see people like that still doing what they love, it gives us all, I think, you got to find what you want to do and then keep doing it.
And that's what you've done. Jim Clark is with us, this month's guest on Horner's Corner here at 93.5, 1590 WAKR, WAOH.TV as well. So now you're into the booth with the / arrows and then RubberDucks, and life in minor league baseball becomes over 30 years, over 3,000 baseball games called. I opened up the show by saying living a dream, and sometimes we say that, but really you are. I mean, you're living a dream of something you've always wanted to do, is called baseball. When did it set into you that, my goodness, this is something special that you've created with Akron?
When I was in my first year in Canton, of course, we didn't have radio the next year, contract issues. We come back in 92, and we don't go on the air until June. Station was just getting started. WCER was the station then. And they had to deal with a club where if you're not on by a certain day, you owe us money every week for not being on the air. So they go, hey, we're going on the air June 15th. I go, you got to hop a bus, go to Albany. They will already be there. Meet them in Albany. You'll pick up with them there. So I do that, and all of a sudden I'm on the air again. And we had a very good team. Brian Graham was a manager. Manny Ramirez played for that club. End of the year, Brian goes, come down to the locker room for a minute. Come down to the clubhouse. He goes, we want to give you this bat, autographed bat from the team. He goes, for what you've done for us every day, day in, day out. You travel with us. You move from the back of the bus to the front of the bus. They go, that's because the guys appreciate what you do. And I thought, this is kind of what it's all about. This is, as you know, the sports world is different. They accept you. They look out for one another. And I really felt like, gosh, this is pretty good. So we're in Canton a couple more years. No contract again for the final 2 years. So we're off 2 years. They go, when we go to Akron, you're going to join us. I go, okay. And so we're off again 2 more years, get to Akron in 97. Jared Wright pitched our first game in Bowie. And I thought, I was tickled to death to be back on the air.
Right.
I just had my son, who was 2.5. Can I tell you this story?
Sure.
First road trips to Bowie. Jeff Detz is our manager. And it's extra innings. We lose 2-1. Jared Wright was pitching very well for us early. And I go climb on the bus. I want to get back to the hotel. And I want to call home. And I'm sitting there for like 2 hours as they go over everything in the clubhouse. I thought, I can't do this. I can't do it. So I call my wife next day. I go, I'm done. I go, can't. He goes, what do you mean you're done? I go, can't do it. I go, I miss Brooke. I miss you and Brooke too much. So figure this out. Don't say you're not going to do this. So I call my partner from Canton, Todd Bell. And Todd did not come to Akron with us. He had a young man who was already on board who was going to do the games with me. And something didn't mesh. The station and him did not mesh. They wanted him out after like 5 games. I go, Todd, pick up Brooke, meet me in Harrisburg. Last part of the trip, we'll talk about this in Harrisburg. So he packs up my son in the back of his truck. He's 2.5 with his car seat, brings him to Harrisburg. I go, Todd, you're on the air with me next Monday night at Canal Park. He goes, what? I go, they want to get rid of the kid. Station wants him out. I felt bad.
Yeah.
But they go, Jim, you go get us Todd. You guys have worked together for 2 years in Canton. So I get Todd, and after that first trip on the bus, I haven't taken another trip on the bus. I packed my son up everywhere we went, and we traveled till the school year ended for my wife, and then she would join us. We traveled the Eastern League in the entire season.
So did he come up into the press box before the games and stuff?
He sat with me in the press box.
I
Never said a word.
Most certainly.
Would play his little games and was very intent on the game. He could imitate. He fell in love with Sean Casey and Shan Perry. He'd go on the field before the games, and I thought, where's Brooke? I'm looking, trying to find him, and there's a circle of players. He's in the middle, and they would go, do Albert Bell, do Kenny Lofton, do Jim Thome. And he would bat and show him the stance. And then he started to do the Sean Casey stance, and he fell in love with the players. They treated him great. The day
and that's how you got over that hump of missing the boy.
Then our other son comes, and we traveled that way for years and years. They both became bat boys for 10 or 12 years down there.
Fabulous.
That saved me then to take them with me.
Jim Clark is with us. He's our guest this month on Horner's Corner. So, Jim, did it ever become, and then I want to get to some other aspects of certainly your career and your book and what you're doing with Akron Public Schools now, but did it ever get emotional to you as you went over the 30-year plateau, as you went over the 3,500 games? Because those are really quite accomplishments for a broadcaster, and you've done it. Has it become emotional at all for you in the broadcast booth with 30 plus years in there?
It did when all the attention came with it, because I felt uncomfortable a little bit. Almost like I was back on TV at WAKR again. I felt uncomfortable a little bit. Once I started talking, everybody made me feel at ease, and it was easier to talk about. But I thought, I wish my parents could have seen all of this.
Yeah.
And my sister died when my youngest son was born. We were coming home from Mercy Hospital. She's going into Mercy Hospital. She never sees my second son. And she worked as a nurse. And she was a baseball fan, but nothing like the rest of us were. But she would call me and go, I love it when you say the bases are full of Indians. So she's at work listening to the games. And I thought, that's pretty neat. She's working, but she's still turning the ball game on just to hear me call games.
Yeah.
And that's when it hit me like, gosh, I wish he could have been here through all of this, watching the boys grow up, watching them play a year of pro ball, she became a huge Indian fan, had season tickets for a while. We had a group of season tickets. And I thought, gosh, I wish she could have been here.
Think about how many generations your voice, your knowledge, your love of the game has touched in the greater Akron Canton area. That's fabulous to me, on the generations of families who have grown up with you and who you've influenced.
It's funny because once in a while I'll go to the concourse before a game because I want to get a Chick-fil-A sandwich, something different from what's upstairs, and a stranger will stop me. I thought, how do they know who I am? And they go, hey, we'll listen to you. thanks so much. It's great what you do. I go, well, thank you. I go, for listening to the games and for telling me that. Or some guy will go, give me your autograph when I'm out there walking out, and all the autograph hounds waiting for players. Some guy will go, hey, Mr. Clark, come. And I thought, you don't want my name on that ball. You got these guys. They go, no, go ahead. And it hits you a little bit then that you've been doing this long enough. And one guy did tell me, they go, you're the voice of my youth. And that hit. I thought, geez, that's how I felt about Jimmy Dudley.
And Joe Tate, and Jimmy Dudley. I know you listen to those guys.
And it does. It kind of hits you a little bit.
Okay, so obviously over 30 years broadcasting, we'll call them the RubberDucks now, before that the Arrows. But along the line, and not to get lost in all this, folks, he's a diehard baseball Indians/Generals fan. I mean, I see your pictures. I know how much and you and I could probably sit and talk about the team for hours. So along the line with the love for the team, you do a book. And you go back and you look at the 1974 Cleveland Indians with this book. So let's talk about the inspiration for the book, what made you put the project together, and probably how much fun it was.
I loved that team. I was 19, had gone to a broadcast school, didn't go to college for a year, and spent that summer going to the ballpark. And so many things happened that summer. I mean, they were bad, really bad the year before. They were okay in 72. That's the year they had Gaylord came in, won the Cy Young. He won 24 games. They were only 6 games out in like August. It was kind of fun again. And 73 was awful. And 74 came up thinking, my gosh, they got to win. I thought, they almost went to New Orleans to play 40 games. They almost left in 64. They could draw some people because they only drew like 690,000 or less for back-to-back years. How do you make any money? How can you even sign a player when you're drawing crowds like that? And Nick Maletti, bless him, who just passed away, he kept that team in Cleveland then. And they start off kind of slow, and then it kind of picks up. Gaylord's not losing at all. They're getting hot, guys like Buddy Bell and George Hendrick, and before they traded Chris Chambliss, they're having good starts, and I thought, geez, this team's fun. And I loved it that year. The Bosman no-hitter. Gaylord wins 15 games in a row. They're in first or second place for like 40 or 50 days, meat of the summer. They're getting crowds again, 40,000, 35,000. After Bosman's no-hitter, they had a doubleheader like 5 days later. Dad, you want to go? He goes, I get up to go to work at 5:30. He goes, yeah, I'll go. And so we go up. And game 1, it's getting late, 9th inning, they're down by 2 runs. I go, we probably should get going. But they already won the first game. He goes, sit down. Buddy's going to tie it up. Put a hand on my shoulder. And she didn't do a whole lot. Dads were different than a little bit. And by God, Buddy Bell hit a home run and tied the game. It goes extra innings. He goes, we've been here this long. He goes, we're going to stay. And they win the game at like 1 minute, 12:59. The curfew they had a curfew back then. You couldn't start an inning after 1 o'clock.
Right.
Tom McCraw wins the game. Right before the curfew, we walk across the tracks where the Muni lot was just a big lot.
Right.
And I get him home because I'm going to stay up. I'm going to be getting up in 2 hours anyway, so he stays up. And little did I know that his eyesight was fading then. I didn't know that. And he was diagnosed with RP 2 years later. And it just began to degenerate and just be almost completely blind. And I never forgot that night. And I thought about, this club, so many things happened that year. I was glued to my radio. Everywhere we went, I had a transistor. And they were only 4.5 games out or 5 games out on Labor Day. 4.5, because it was the same as the 48 Indians were 4.5 out on Labor Day. Of course, they won the World Series.
Right.
Then it all fell apart when they acquired Frank Robinson. They ended up 12 games under 500. But what they had done was they drew 1 million fans. And I really thought with Perry winning 15 games in a row, that solidified the franchise for a while. Because they got back over the 1 million mark, they made money, the city fell in love with the club, and I thought, I'm going to do some digging, I'm going to write a book about that club.
That's
And
terrific.
I took it day by day.
Yeah, so you have circled that year, that 74, as a real critical year in Cleveland baseball history, and that's the inspiration of putting the book together.
I
The
really
name of the
think
book,
so.
why don't you throw it
Rally Around Cleveland, the story of the franchise saving Cleveland Indians, because I really thought that we knew expansion was coming. They wanted another team in Canada. Washington wanted baseball. Seattle, there were so many cities. Dallas wanted baseball. Tampa, Florida. And I really thought that if they would have gone down that road again and drawn 600,000 fans, as much as Maletti would have wanted to keep the club in Cleveland, I thought he would have had no choice. But they turned it around. They drew 900,000 next year. They had good attendance marks after that. And I think it really started the ball rolling to keep them there.
Well, your ball is still rolling in play-by-play. Jim not only is the voice of the RubberDucks, but his love for play-by-play and the education system and kids is certainly there when we talk about you're still doing a lot of play-by-play with Akron Public Schools, keeping us all informed in the basketball and football seasons. And I love listening to the broadcast and, to a lot of these kids in Akron Public Schools, it's the only time maybe they'll get their names on the radio. And I know you really enjoy it.
I do. I'm an Akron Garfield grad, and it's just they're not covered that much. Honestly, I'm not just saying this. You're besides Michael Bevan and some of the great Beacon writers, you're their only radio outlet to hear about Akron City Schools, Akron Public School sports, what you do for them, your players of the week, all that, and you do that. But outside of that, media-wise, and I get it. The city schools have dwindled to only 6 now. One time having 9 or 10, and it's all St. V and Hoban. I understand. I get that part, but I thought, I'm going to make a phone call so we can get them on the air somehow. So through Teamline, which is an internet service, and we started streaming the games with video the year of the pandemic. And Joe Basilotti and Ron Linger, who just do a fabulous job.
They do.
The work of 10, they do. And they go, we get great response for these games. They go, you may not realize it. They go, but we don't get hollered at. Everyone wants to bash this and that. They do in the school system now. They go, but we get great feedback from this. So we're still doing it. We can't do as many as we once did, but we're still doing them. And it's funny. I'll still, when I do a Garfield game, it still tugs a little bit when you see that, and it's back to, it's no longer, I hate seeing Kenmore gone. They were a great rival of Garfield, a tremendous rival.
Yeah.
It's now Garfield again, the brand new school, which is beautiful. But it's still, you hear the alma mater, and I always brag that I go, Garfield is one of the few schools I know of that has their own fight song. Everyone plays Ohio State's fight song. They have 2 or 3 songs that are strictly Garfield, and they still play them. And I think that's wonderful.
Jim Clark is with us. He is our guest this month on Horner's Corner. And Jim, we hope it's way down the road. But eventually there's going to be a time when you say, well, you know what? I'm going to hang up this microphone and headphones. When that ever comes about, and I hope it's decades from now, but whenever that comes about, what would you like to be remembered as a broadcaster? How would you like the people to think about you as the guy that brought them Arrows, RubberDucks, Akron Public Schools as a broadcaster? How would you like to have that remembered?
You know, maybe as a guy that they could relate to a little bit, that was kind of like them, who wanted their team to win, but I don't scream anymore. I kind of got that out of me a long time ago. I tried, and then that's guy's styles. Hey, that's fine. You do what's best for you. I want him to go that, well, when I listened to his game, I felt relaxed. He knew what he was talking about. And he was my eyes. Because my father could listen to me for like 2 years. And that made me focus so much on detail. Because I wanted him to be able to see it in his mind. Mm-hmm. And I hope they can feel that I have a love for the game. And I'm old school. When I have a day baseball game, I'm sitting in Cleveland Stadium in 1968. I love day baseball.
Me too.
And I understand that as well. It draws very well in Cleveland. It really does, and maybe they'll do some more of that. In the minor leagues, it's more difficult with day baseball, except on weekends.
Right.
And that's understandable, except when you have your school days. But I hope they just think that I can tell he loves what he's doing. And when they think I'm not doing that, I think I'll know it's time to maybe step away. And I've told our front office people, Jim and Ken, I go, I'll know when I lose it. I'll know when I don't have my edge anymore. But hopefully you guys, if you think you hear it, you'll tell me. Don't worry about it. But I don't want to be on there and sound like I'm struggling. My voice is different. Everyone will find out when they get older, your voice changes. And I have to take care of it more than I ever did now. And that bothers the heck out of me because I'll know that when I'm not having a really good night, I can tell, oh, you sound fine. I thought, don't tell me that because I know when I'm not at my best. And I know it.
And he is one of the best. Jim, thanks for joining us this month on the show, Horner's Corner.
Ray, thank you. It's always fun to go back and talk about these things. And it was fun to talk about WAKR.
Yeah.
It holds a special place in my heart. It always will.
Jim Clark, again, our Horner's Corner guest this month. I'm Ray Horner. And by the way, before we go, it was so nice to see Jim finally getting a chance a few years back to call an Indians game / Guardians game in Arizona. He made sure those travels were good. He got it in. I remember seeing him in the winter. We were at a basketball game. I saw you and your son, and you were so excited to go, so I was really happy that worked out for you. But he is the voice that we've grown up with the Arrows and the RubberDucks, and now you know the whole story on how it came to be. Hopefully you've enjoyed this month's edition of Horner's Corner. For Jim Clark, I'm Ray Horner. Thanks for viewing and listening to the show.